what happens to the psyche of a Black child when you leave the system that you say is not working for the children in the urban areas and you take them into the suburbs.
When you move from the inner city to the white suburb, you jump from the kettle into the fire. Now, let me put this in perspective, Sister Andrea. When do we get the greatest expansion of independent white private schools? 1954 to 1974. That means more white private schools were created between Brown versus Board of Education,
yes,
and the creation of special education. So between Brown and special ed, that's when you get most of your white private schools in this country. So when a Black family moves to the suburb, whether the child attends private or public school, those schools are supposed to be isolated for white learners. They're not supposed to be desegregated with Black learners. And so when you put the Black boy or girl in the predominantly white school, you set them up for academic terrorism. You set them up for a classroom lynching. You set them up for a psychological beatdown, because the minute the mother and father leaves that school, those teachers and those administrators and those children, they're going to let loose on your child through psychological warfare. And which is why I tell parents, if you're going to put your kid in a white school, try not to do it before 4th or 5th grade if you can help it. Why? Your child needs to know who they are. They need to have a healthy level of self-esteem. Their self-concept need to be intact. If you put a richly melanated, blue, black, purple, beautiful Black boy or girl in a white school, before they know who they are, they will get a high school diploma, but it will be a diploma in self-hatred.
Lord have mercy. I know you're not lying. I raised both of my sons in the suburbs and raised them through the system. Use my Jamaican heritage really to let them see, send them back to the culture, tell them who they are, raise them up, and was able to fight with the force, but it was a constant fight. My 30-year-old said, "Tell me why you put us through this." Graduated from college, for all intents and purposes. He said, but it was torture. You don't know what was said in the classrooms. You don't know what those teachers were saying or what the students were saying when I was the only Black child in my class, and we had to do a project, and the teacher said, and the nobody chose me. And when I was finally placed with a group, one of the white kids said, "The only thing you can do is hold my pencil." And he would just go on and on and on. And I was like, oh my God. Here I thought as a parent, I said this some weeks ago, that we were doing much better when our schools were desegregated. So, segregated. So what is it going to take for us to get back to that place? Do you know Sharif El-Mekki?
I'm not sure. The name doesn't.
Okay. So that's someone who is working now on getting more Black educators and doing the work. And he left the charter school system and he started his own thing to help, Black
and that's
boys.
not a bad thing, but that's not a solution. That's an intervention. So I support what the brother is doing, because we need interventions to slow down the abuse until we have solutions. But I want to be clear. Homeschooling is an intervention. It's not a solution. What the brother is doing, bringing more Black people into the school, I support him. We need that, but it is an intervention. Let me tell you the difference between an intervention and a solution. An intervention is something you do to slow down the bleeding. When you put a Band-Aid on a cut, that's an intervention. A solution stops the blood from flowing altogether. And the solution is independent schools. Here's our issue, Sister Andrea. Taking this to a post-traumatic slavery disease framework. Taking this to a post-traumatic slavery disease framework. Black people don't love ourselves enough to give our children the very best they deserve. Let me say it again. Black people don't love ourselves enough to give our children the very best that they deserve. Sister, the school that we're renovating right now in Wilmington, when that elementary school is done, we would have spent about $1 million, maybe 1.25 million, right? Philadelphia Blacks are going to spend more than that on Christmas alone. We spent more than that on Thanksgiving. We spend more than that on Easter. We spend more than that for Happy New Year, for 4th of July. If we took
proms,
our shopping money, we could build schools for our children. Here's the question. Why do Black people claim to love who they are and stand upon the shoulders of their ancestors when we refuse to do the one thing that can mean so much to the future of Black children, and that is build independent Black schools?
So where do we go from here? Because there are so many people that are saying, yes, I agree with the brother, but when it's time to put your money where your mouth is, it's not happening. Are you saying to me that post-traumatic slavery, that we're still traumatized to the point where we just don't think we can make a difference in our own communities? Is that what I'm hearing?
It's not that we don't think we can make a difference. We know we can make a difference. The problem that we have is not a lack of intellectual resources. We have that. Financial resources. We have that. Experts in the Black community. We have all the PsyDs and MGs and JDs and PhDs. We have every resource, Sister Andre, except one. The one resource we lack is the one resource every other community has above us, and that is the human resource. Black people who care enough to put their money where it needs to be. We are a people who have a dysfunctional history of buying what we like and begging for what we want. That is the problem. We are suffering an economic holocaust, which is an outgrowth of a psychological holocaust, and that psychological holocaust is based off of 403 years of deliberate indoctrination, making Black people think we can't come together and get the job done ourselves. And I have to, as much as I respect the religious community, I have to put some of this blame at the feet of our Black clergy, because the Black church takes 3 things from Black people that we get nothing in return for. They take too much of our money, too much of our time, and too much of our emotions. I'm going to say it again. The Black church takes too much of our money, too much of our time, and too much of our energy in the form of emotion, and they don't reciprocate the donations that are given to them. Every Black church should have an independent Black school. Every Black church should have an independent Black school. Every Black church should have a Black bank or a Black credit union. And if you don't, you are not doing the Lord's work. You're doing the devil's work.
What you are doing is opening up eyes and ears everywhere. How do you navigate through the challenges that you experience? Because people come for you.
Well, I would say firstly that I don't live in the prison of other people's opinions. When you decide to be a trailblazer, when you decide to be an activist, when you decide to be a freedom fighter for Black people, one thing you must be willing to relinquish is people's control over how you see yourself. So I could care less about what the peanut gallery has to say about my work. Truth be told, there's no other certified school psychologist of my race in the history of this country that has had the impact that I have had upon the way Black parents do business with the school system and the mental health system. And we have had some great Black psychologists, the Dr. Amos Wilson, who I think is the greatest Black psychologist ever and the greatest Black scholar of the second half of the 20th century, Dr. Wade Nobles, who's still doing the great work. We had a Dr. Naim Akbar, who's still with us in the flesh. We've had Bobby Wright, great Black psychologist, but nobody, no psychologist has ever transformed the way Black parents understand and do business with the school system and the mental health system like Dr. Umar Johnson. So if I never built the school, I am forever etched into the history of Black history for what I've done these first 22 years of the 21st century.
What advice do you have for parents specifically with Black boys?
Specifically with Black boys, number one, you have to teach them discipline. One of the areas where we are falling short Sister Andrea, is our single mothers who are raising 70% of our sons alone. And I fault the black men for that. Collectively, we as black men are failing our single mothers because we're not stepping into the gap where the biological father is not present. And so the mothers are raising these boys, and we have to make sure that the mothers are teaching them self-control and discipline. No black boy is going to survive in a public school, private school, parochial school, Catholic school if they don't have self-control. Black boys are being suspended and expelled from school in record-breaking numbers. Philadelphia is in the top 10 for suspensions and expulsions of black boys. A report was just released from the U.S. Department of Education that spoke to the very high suspension and expulsion rate of young black males. And so mothers, please understand, one of your main jobs as a parent is to teach your son discipline. And let me give you Dr. Umar's definition of discipline. Quote, "It is the ability to do what you don't want to do when it has to be done, whether you like it or not."